My name is Jaime Carrillo, and I'm going to be drawing a zombie today. I like using Copic markers, especially for conventions, because they're really easy and quick to use, especially if you're doing commissions at a show. You're able to knock out the completed image fairly quickly. I use a lot of traditional media. I know how to use Photoshop and a lot of the digital programs, but I prefer the traditional media overall. I think there's some amazing things being done with digital, but having got into this originally influenced by some of the older fantasy illustrators from the 70s and the 80s, that kind of influenced me to take up an actual brush and paint, and so I try to stick to traditional whenever I can. It's tough, the deadlines are tough, but I have a mentor who's helped me a lot, and just reading up on what other people do and how to do it, learn how to be as quick as possible and move on to the next job, because digital has a lot of advantages, obviously, and one of them being speed. But since I prefer traditional media, I know that I have to somehow match their speed in one way or another. So, and one method is by using the Copic markers, which I discovered a few years ago. I had seen some very famous, well-known artists using them and decided to give them a shot. And I was really intimidated by them because I'm not used to producing things that quickly. But the first time I tried them, I found out how easy they were to use. Usually I just start by roughing out a pencil drawing, give it a second to dry. I just kind of make some markers with a real thin micron pen, just to tell me where my lines are going to go, and then erase the bulk of it out. And then from there, I just start doing layers with the Copics. I've seen a lot of really good artists just use layers of gray, and I've used the color ones a couple of times, but just sticking to a grayscale, you're able to get some really nice gradients, get some values. You're able to tell exactly what you're doing with the values a lot easier and quicker, rather than trying to worry about color as well as value. A lot of times if somebody's at a show and they request a certain character, I just kind of let it happen organically, just make it up on the fly. Try to add in a little bit of a background or something just to give it a place, give the character a placement, so that way you can fill in anything you want in the foreground and it'll read correctly no matter what it is that what colors you use, or like I said, if you're doing a grayscale. There's times, I don't know if it's just me or if it's other artists as well. Sometimes I find myself at a point in the drawing where I feel like it's just not working, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of losing the drawing or the painting or whatever it is, and you kind of have to work through that. And like I said, I don't know if that's just me or if other artists feel that same way, and a lot of times I feel like I'm about to lose it, and then you kind of go through, and again, if you add a background, you can make the front layers read correctly, because then it has an environment. I think it was Delacroix said, he had a very famous quote where, I don't know if it was just an apocryphal quote or if it was real. He said that if you give him any three colors, he could paint the skin of a Venus. He said, give me three colors and I'll do it. He said, as long as you let me use whatever colors I want for the background. And that is very true, because skin is, I found when I first started painting, skin was very difficult to portray, because skin takes on the qualities of whatever environment is around it. You don't stick to one flesh or one skin color. If you do, it's kind of a recipe for disaster, because all of your pieces are going to look identical, and it'll look like everybody's standing in the same place. Even if they're on the moon and you paint them with the same color as somebody who's standing in their front yard, it just doesn't read right. I don't know any artist personally that feels like they're there, like they've arrived, because you're always learning new things. You're always trying to improve your technique, and when you feel like you're done, that's when you kind of stop growing as an artist, and then your stuff gets very stale. And I'm happy to say that I don't know anybody personally like that, and I know I don't believe that I am anywhere near where I want to be. So I know I still have lots and lots of room to grow. And these Copics are just they're numbered, and they just get progressively darker. And so that's, again, you're able to build layers and try to give your image some depth. And that's I was always drawn to I wouldn't say photorealism when I was younger, but I was drawn to the more realistic styles, and that's what I always went through. I mean, this is obviously not realistic. Nobody would think this was a photograph, but you just want it to read correctly. You want it to look like it's actually got another 3 dimensions to it. And so, again, you just build up those layers until you feel like you're there. And a lot of times I find myself, again, I don't know if it's just me or if it's other artists as well, you find out the layer that you drew previously, it just doesn't quite work, so you just, again, you throw another layer on top of it and just keep it going darker. See, these are numbered from 0 to 6, progressively darker. I thought that would be enough to give me the look I wanted, but now I had to reach down in my box and get number 7, which is actually a shade darker as well, because I wasn't getting the look that I wanted. A lot of people use blenders with these. I tend to not use them. It's just a choice. I don't think there's anything good about them, anything bad. It's just different people have different styles when they're using these. I just try to keep moving, keep everything going, and if the ink is still wet, these are alcohol-based markers, so they dry really quickly. But if you just keep it moving, they'll kind of blend with each other. As soon as you put a darker layer on top, or even just a lighter layer, they kind of just pull the other layers out. Pull the other colors out, and then you can get a, not really a blend, but it's sort of a transition. At home, I sit at a very short desk. Used to be sitting on a doggy stool, and the entire desk is a mess. And that's just the way my brain just works like that. It's almost a clutter, but yet I kind of know where everything is, and I know what I'm trying to find at the time. So I paint the same way. I do a lot of oil painting. That's what most of my commissions for my freelance work is. It's oil paintings. And if I'm not holding 4 or 5 brushes in my hand at the same time, I don't feel comfortable. I feel like I'm lacking somehow. I need to get more brushes in my hand because I need one for the dark values, one blender, one for the light values. So I tend to just hold them all in my hand, even though it's pointless. This hand just sits here holding all these, but that's just the way it feels comfortable to me. I like to go through the piece and just punch certain things up just to give it even more of a contrast. Right now, I'd like to experiment with the color Copics a little bit more, because right now I've been doing work for Storm King Productions, John Carpenter's Tales for Halloween Night, and again, using traditional media, I'm either penciling it, or the last one I did, I actually used gouache, the opaque watercolor. And eventually I'd like to use Copic markers to do it, because I think I'd be able to do the same thing that I did with the gouache, but with the Copics I think it would really, really lend itself nicely. Copics are also really nice because these that I'm using right now, they're a little on the dry side, and that's okay. You can buy refills, they're really, really cheap. And you can just keep refilling the marker and reusing it. As long as it has a tip, they're really easy to use and refill. So you buy the marker once and you're able to just keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. really kind of handy to have that versatility with the marker. Never really feel like a piece is done. I'll always just keep going back and just doodling and doodling and doodling until finally it's time to either the client's back and wants it, or the deadline's hit, or I realize I really need to get on to the next one. If you let me go, I'll just sit here and just keep drawing on it and keep drawing on it and keep drawing on it. And I'm one of the worst. If you don't give me a deadline, I'm one of the worst. If you give me a deadline, I will meet it. I've never been late for a deadline. But if you tell me, oh, whenever, you know what, we don't need it right away, then I'm going to take until whenever, and that's never a good thing, because I will take as long as you let me, as long as you give me. I will use every ounce of that. Get something thicker here. Anytime somebody asks me for a project, and I'll say, okay, when do you need it by? And they'll say, oh, whenever, there's no rush. So I'll tell them, no, give me a deadline. Tell me when you need it, and I'll have it ready. But don't ever tell me whenever. And again, I'll just keep going if you let me. So I'll go ahead and just put a stop there. We'll consider this one done for now. If you leave it with me, I'll probably end up going back to it later, like always. My name is Jaime Carrillo, and this is my zombie from C2E2 2018.